Are we live, Justin? I'd rather think we are.
I think we are.
Holy Jesus.
Although it says we cannot connect to your server, make sure the URL and stream key are correct. But I keep on here pinging in the background, which indicates that we are live. I do think.
I think so.
I feel alive. You know, that's an
and you look very much so.
It's all an illusion, Fionnán. It's all an illusion. We're all in the Matrix, you know.
It's that hologram thing, you know. Bullets dodged. They'll be dodging them like this in a minute. You know. No shit. Hi.
That's the reveal of this whole historical Mash Bros project. It turns out Fionnán's been dead the whole time. From 1879.
That's Polo Kane and drag just dropped up. I'm me. I can see that. I can see the big reveal.
Yeah.
It's like in the Scooby Doo. So Fionnán, how are you, buddy? Are you keeping okay? Are you keeping okay? Everything all right, Matthew?
Right. The computer, just on that note, the computer just froze.
Sorry, you're back again. You're back again.
Now you're back.
You're back again. You're back again. No, is everything? How are you keeping? Everything okay?
Grand.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Despite the weather.
It's been a depressing week. I'll tell you a couple of things, highlights, but it's been on a depressing week. I come home the other day. It'd been pissing me rain all day, and I got a note from my postman. I got one of the guys who delivers stuff for me, and this is what I come home to. This is what he had left. So this, if you can carefully read the note, it says, "Martin, box of drink behind blue bin. I've never felt more like an alcoholic in my entire life." I thought to myself, you know, it was stuff I actually had won at auction. I sort of wanted to clarify that it's quality spirit, not box of drink behind the bin. Because I wasn't here, he left it behind the bin. But yeah, it didn't make me feel too good in the piss and rain. It was like, anyway, there you go. Such is life.
No, it's hard. I met an elderly woman recently enough who was friends with one of my aunts and lives locally. And when she heard that I lived here, she said, "Oh, I've seen you before over at the glass bin at the supermarket."
Brilliant. But you want to say, "No, I'm a quality functioning alcoholic." I do this sort of semi-professionally. Oh no! Listen, we're going to do a bit of news. And Fionnán's going to sit about for a couple of minutes to be got through the news. Then we're going to get chatting to him about some of the stuff that he's been up to. Because as you can tell by his red demeanour, he has been in a sunnier climate than he is currently. Let's put it like that.
That's the Mediterranean filter.
Oh yes. The Mediterranean, the south of France. Shall we say rouge? That'll be the colour of it. That'd be a good name for some sort of cosmetic product. Me and Justin are going to set up with a rival to L'Oreal. If we can fucking do that for him, it works miracles. But we're going to do a bit of news, then we're going to catch up with you. And it'll be interesting to see what you say about some of this stuff that I'm going to talk about. So stay with us a few minutes and we'll get back to you, okay?
Okay. Away you go to the green one.
Now, Justin, how's you this week? All right?
Not too bad. It is a bit wet, a bit of a wet week, isn't it? It's really
it's been crap.
It's been awful. You know,
it's been crap.
What can you do? You can't do anything.
Here, it's December in Ireland. What the fuck are you supposed to do about that? Anyway, listen, I'll do a bit of news. So last night, I had the privilege of heading up to the Hinch Distillery because we've got another whiskey distillery in Ireland and in County Down and in Northern Ireland, whatever you want to put it. Because this week, Hinch celebrated their 3rd birthday of putting whiskey in casks the other day. So we have more whiskey coming of age, and obviously as that goes on, there'll be more and more and more of it. So they've had this week, Hinch became a man. They've had their bar mitzvah, or whatever way you want to put it. Nobody had to get snipped or anything for that there. Don't do that up there. But no. So it was. Well, congratulations to everybody all round because they're big outfit, big investment. I heard
big volume potential as well.
Well, the double volume from they started off initially it was 400,000 litres, and now they're up to 1 million. And I think they have capacity to expand again, but obviously it's a big decision to decide to do that. So going forward, I don't see why they wouldn't. But that's a sort of question for another day. But I was up there. Terry Cross was there, Dr. Terry Cross OBE.
There he is. Oh,
no, that's not him. That's Michael. That's Michael Morris. And Will, the distiller, who's up there, nice guy. I was chatting to him for a fair wee bit last night. But it was all laid out. It was all nice. And then I got given one of these. Now, I had a drink of it while I was there, but there is signed by Terry. This is quite an unusual thing, I have to say, because this was lifted out. Well, that was us doing a comparison between the Newmake and the 3-year-old whiskey. Okay. This was lifted out of a cask that was distilled on the first day. So this was lifted out on its 3rd birthday and given out to all that was there. And it was
pretty special then. Special.
It is to know that this was given out on the day it became a whiskey. That doesn't happen very often. Normally you'll get a thing where this is ours. Newmake, or this is our whiskey, whatever it is given out. But actually, to have it left out on the day that they all became a whiskey, because obviously there's still more than one cask on the first day. So this is a bit special, So I'm going to open it because I had a drink of it last night, but I'm going to get it open, and I'm putting it into a wee Hinch tour glass.
Mm-hmm.
Now this. To be fair, this is cask strength and all, because let me just check again. It's 61.7% alcohol. One thing I will say is that after 3 years, it's taken a decent little bit of colour.
Mm-hmm.
But last night, I was very impressed. The Newmake, nice, light, fruity, decent little bit of oil to it. But that's kind of the style we're going for, I think. But this is...
And you were talking to some guys that were doing quite well out of the cask program up there as well.
Well, the initial cask buyers, I got chatting to a couple of them. One in particular who had bought... What he did was he had bought 3 casks for one... He had 3 kids. He bought one for each of his kids. They were the first guys. And what he said was, he says, they've been really, really good to us. They sent out bottles to us. They've invited us up for a couple of tastings and all that kind of stuff. Now, going forward, they still have a cask program. I'm not sure. I think the initial investors, obviously, the first footers, if you like, are always going to get the real VIP treatment. But I think there's other benefits to be had with the legacy cask program, because I have a brochure on it here. But yeah, it's really nice whiskey. The way they have the place done out was always really, really nice. But I noticed they've done a few changes since I was last there. But yeah, so this is their coming of age drink. Now, I'll tell you, it doesn't taste as if it's 61% alcohol. It really doesn't. And it's nice, light. It's very young, obviously. I mean, that you can't get away from that, but that's kind of the point, that they have just crossed that threshold.
How do you think they've achieved that, Marty, then? Not tasting like it's such high ABV?
It's just, I think it's just the style they're going for. But I mean, that's at 61.7 or 61.5, whatever it was. It doesn't taste that. And that's, there's no aggression with it. It doesn't necessarily need to be calmed down a huge amount. And I have to take my hat off to them, because I thought it was really, really impressive. There wasn't that many of these to be handed out, to be honest. And I was privileged enough that they give me a drink there, and they give me a couple to take with me. But yeah, as I say, really, really good news for them and going forward. Now, they're telling me they're in 35 different markets all around the world, which is, let's be honest, in 3 years, that's a fairly decent achievement too. Because it's not that easy to get into these markets, I'm led to believe. And they're doing the cask launch legacy cask program where you can buy a cask of whiskey for £4,950. That's what they're selling them for. Which, for single malt casks, I mean, I know there's lots of people offered ones that are a hell of a lot more expensive than that. So yeah, big investment. Looks as if it's all on the up and up. Another thing they mentioned as well, I think we saw that within 3 years, 2-3 years, I can't remember the exact date. Within 2-3 years, they're going to be using all barley sourced in County Down. I mean, County Down. We've talked about this before. County Down's becoming a real hotbed of distilling, Irish distilling.
There's terroir, and those are drumlins.
Terroir and the drumlins. But I mean, you're talking about none of the other big guys. And let's be honest, if you're putting out 1 million LPA, that's what millions of bottles every year. To say you're going to source all your grain from County Down, well, that's a big commitment too, because it means you're sort of tied in a little bit on what you can do on your pricing and stuff. So yeah, as I say, it was a really nice night. I was with Peter for a fair bit there, and it was good fun. It was good fun. We had a good chat, and Peter was talking to Terry. Terry's only vice now is cigarettes, and we're going to get a program where we can try and get him off them. I think that's maybe the next challenge, Peter. We'll try and get Terry off the cigarettes, because it's very bad for you. It's very, very bad for you, cigarettes. But yeah, so yeah, good for them. Well done.
You used to smoke. There's nothing worse than a reformed smoker, Marty.
No, just I did. I smoked 30 a day when I stopped.
Wow.
Yeah, I was on 30 a day and I stopped. What age is my son now? My son's 23, 24. I stopped about 13, 14 years ago.
Okay.
And otherwise it would have killed me, I think. I think that's fair enough. But I'm glad I got off them. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Anytime you have an addiction to anything, it's not easy. But I always think the same thing. Everybody thinks they like cigarettes, but they dislike not having them, which is not the same thing, because it's sort of a double negative they think makes a positive. But no, it's a bit of a thing. So yeah, congratulations to the Hinch. Well done. Really nice spirit. Really nice Newmake. And yeah, all good going forward.
Lovely stuff. You can check it all out yourself here. There's the link to Hinch Distillery. And remember to comment, like, and share. We're live on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Telegram, Instagram sometimes, and wherever you get your podcasts from, if it isn't visual. But there you go. Check it out yourself. There's the full details of Hinch Distillery. There you go.
Excellent. I just seeing the comments there. Peter Stewart says, I haven't got down to friend at hand yet to get a bottle of that cologne yet. Wife or daughter going tomorrow morning to see if there are any left. Peter, there was none left last Monday. They're all gone, my friend. So don't see if Greta Thunberg had given you a tune for wasted car journey. There only was 50 of them released. So
what about those ones at £5,000 a bottle? They're pretty good.
Couple of them there, Peter. If you want a couple of them, nip down and get them. To be honest, as an investment, they're probably talking a couple of ones about them this week. And do you know, whenever the Middleton Pearl came out, it was £3,500 a bottle. People thought people were mad for buying that. Roll on about many years it is now, and that's now nearly £30,000 a bottle. So if you want to buy one, Peter, maybe just nip down and get one of the 5,000 ones. There's a couple of them left. Cologne, gone, long gone. Anyway, such is life. Now, next up, Whiskey Auctioneer. Whiskey Auctioneer, the auction ended last Monday, and they sold all of the Blair Castle bottles, which is reputed to contain the oldest whiskey in the world. Not by length of time and cask, by when it was distilled. I suppose that they came from 1833, although there's a number of question marks on the verification of all this. There was 24 bottles up for auction. I think I'm right in saying there was 40 actually found, and the highest one went for £19,500. If I'm honest, if they could totally guarantee that was from 1833, I think that it would probably soar in value really quickly. The lowest one was 14,000, but there was so much interest in the site Whiskey Auctioneer, which is a big concern. They had nearly 9,000 bottles up for auction this month. There's so much interest in it that the site actually just packed in totally at one point, because I was sort of looking to see if I was going to buy one or buy something.
You mean buy it?
No. But I mean, the thing is, I thought I'll keep an eye on stuff, but the site just boom. So there's total worldwide interest in it.
These sites never, ever seem to be able to cope with the demand.
I think there's just that much interest that just as the auction nears an end, it just goes boom. The problem with Whiskey Auctioneer is it's a massive international site. You know, the biggest one in Ireland, Irish Whiskey Auctions down with Anthony, and that they're maybe doing 1,200 bottles, 1,500 bottles of a month. Whiskey Auctioneer's 6 times that size, and shipping stuff from all over the world. So just as the auction comes to an end, but if anybody bids on anything in the auction, the whole thing stays open for like 2 minutes. The whole auction stays live.
But surely that could mean it could overrun and overrun and overrun and overrun and overrun.
It says it's supposed to stop at 7 o'clock. It's normally it's way after that before it actually stops. So yeah, but that's what it does. But yeah, 7. It's supposed to end at 7, but the whole thing just collapsed. But yeah, it's all good. But one of them bottles, it would have been nice to have one of them, but yeah, I would need your money for that, Justin. You know,
I don't know. How do you even prove the authenticity of that?
It did a little test on it. There was sort of conjecture of it. There was ideas that they were rebottled in the 1930s. There was a couple of different bits and pieces. There's stuff that's sort of query stuff, but when it's all said and done, it'd be very hard to prove definitely that it was from that time, but they've probably done it as best they can. So
it's a bit like the Blair Witch Project, Dad. You don't know whether it's real or not.
Well, I suppose maybe something like that, you know. But as I say, it'd be nice to have if they could genuinely prove that was when it was from. I think it would just go in value. But they sent it away to get tested, and people said it was, but there's a bit margin of error and all this kind of stuff, you know. So anyway, that is what it is. But it was 19.5 grand for the top ball. Now, where Hinch now is the newest whiskey in Ireland, Bushmills have decided to release their oldest expression to date. 44-year-old Bushmills. And that looks superb. I imagine it would be a beautiful thing to drink. Distilled in 1978. There's only going to be 40 of these. That's it.
Wow. 40
bottles, and they can only be bought in Dubai duty free. And it's to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Dubai duty free. That's why it's going over there. 48% ABV. Price tag $12,000.
10 grand.
About 9.5, roughly. About £9,500. But I mean, in all honesty, who's going to drink them? Those are investment bottles. Is there any value in the investment of them at that kind of money? I don't really know. Is there? I don't know. But there's only 40 of these, and as Bushmills,
it is pretty unique. I mean, it
is.
It's double the price of that other one we were talking about there. That Peter Stewart's wife would kill him if he bought it at 5 grand. But as you say, it maybe doubles. But at 10 grand, is there any meat in the bone for investors?
I would have thought going forward that it will increase. I couldn't. It's Bushmills. We all know Bushmills do the same thing every time. They do. Oh, brilliant! We love it. Oh, they're releasing the Causeway collections. Cask strength is finished, nice. Oh, blah blah blah. Then what they do is they piss everybody off because they release a 25-year-old at £800 a bottle, and they keep doing stuff like this. You know, they do everything well, and then it falls down arse, and then it does that. But we all kind of agree. Most people would tend to agree. that as it currently stands, aged Bushmills is the best spirit in Ireland. It's fabulous stuff when it's done right. And the only problem is Bushmills sometimes just don't do it right. You know, they release the Causeway collection and then they'll release like Red Bush or something. It's just, oh, guys, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know,
Yeah.
we'll release a collection, but we'll make it really hard to collect. You know, it's the white bottles that they released in China, part of the Causeway collection or the rare cask tubes. And there's just so much confusion. And they always do this. It's just what they do. But everybody knows that we love Bushmills. We genuinely do love the spirit of most of it. But it is what it is. But yeah, but they also released another thing in the States, the private reserve, it's called. And that's 4 bottles, single malts, finished, cask finished in various things, and you can buy them through Reserve Bar. Now it's 3 10-year-olds and a 12-year-old, all spent 6 years in bourbon and sherry casks before being finished in. One's finished in a plum brandy, another one finished in a Pomerol, another one finished in a Grand Cru Burgundy, and then the 12-year-old's finished in a tequila cask. Now these are finishes that do appear, some of them do appear in the Causeway collection. But, and here's the thing, the 10-year-old Pomerol over here is 100 quid a bottle.
Right.
And it was supposed to be exclusively for the Irish market in the Causeway collection. And this Pomerol is $60. Now it's an age statement Causeway collection bottle. It's released at 60. I would need to see the bottles to see. I'd do a little bit of a comparative tasting. But the Pomerol, don't get me wrong, the Pomerol whiskey is absolutely beautiful thing. Lovely whiskey it is. But, you know, it's like in the States, it's half the price that it is here. So it's a bit of a strange one. Obviously, so it's Bushmills doing what Bushmills normally do, you know, get people quite confused. You have a Pomerol cask finished one American market that can be bought through this place, and then one that was supposed to be exclusive over here. Is it the same batch repackaged, or
are you sure this confusion doesn't arise from the fact that it's a global brand, and unfortunately everybody knows everything else about every other country's market because of the internet nowadays?
Yeah, probably a bit of that, but they're a big corporation. They should be able to withstand these strange things that goes on. And the fact that people talk, and the fact that they have fans all over the world. It gets a little bit confusing at times. But available on Reserve Bar if you're in the States, and they do ship, because I know plenty of states in America have very weird shipping laws. But if you can, then probably well worth picking them up. I know the Pomerol Causeway one's really nice. I really like that.
Good.
Right.
Good.
Bit more good news. Tullamore Dew have announced that this year they've went into profit. Last year they lost 3.7 million euro. They lost last year, but this year they've announced they're into profit 4.1 million euro on sales of 35 million. So I know they've rejigged the whole thing. That was that grants who own them have done a little bit of change and doing so on and so forth. They had that weird thing earlier on this year where they couldn't get their typical normal bottles, so they just bottled in a sort of generic whiskey bottle and said same whiskey, different bottle on it. Now when a big whiskey producer the size of Grant's are struggling to get bottles, it kind of tells you there's supply problems, massive supply problems. But yeah, so good news for them. Good news for all the people who work down there and so on. So yeah, good on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brand that could be overdue a renaissance, a bit like Paddy as well, isn't it?
Well, they're the second biggest Irish whiskey brand, you know. So I don't necessarily need to think that they have to do very much to stay where they are, or to even to grow it up. But yeah.
There's Peter's comment. He's not sure about the tequila one. Doesn't sound just right. Yes, we thought that too. Tequila, but
well, put it like this: Bushmills are owned by Jose Cuervo, so I'm pretty sure a fairly good idea where the casks came from. So it's a bit of a fairly no-brainer. But I mean, what you're relying there is on someone to say, right, okay, we'll try this and this. Yeah, it tastes good. Maybe leave it in another 3 months, or no, that's more than enough. That's enough for that, and pull it out. Everybody's doing these different cask finishes. So yeah.
No, madness. But there you go. Where are we heading to next? It's 21:25. We're on Sunday night instead. If you're watching and catch up, you won't notice any difference. So if you watch it on Monday, but if you watch it this afternoon, you wouldn't have seen it. Marty was lucky enough to be at Hinch last night. So
who was asking? Are we just going to keep? There's no more Saturday nights. As we've come out of COVID and stuff and things have got back to normal, sometimes we have a social life. It doesn't happen all that often, I assure you. But no, our normal standard time is 10 o'clock on a Saturday. But if we do have another engagement, then we'll put it off. We'll do something on the Sunday. Over Christmas, we might have to miss a show in a week, but I hope we don't. But as we are back to having a modicum of social interaction with other human beings,
I had the radio Christmas party yesterday, and then I've got the golf club one coming up as well. So it's just one of those. It's just one of those things. Things. Can't do everything midweek.
Can't do it all, as I say. But this is the last piece of news. This caught me eye earlier on. The SMWS, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, share price plummeted the other day. I mean, it dropped by something like 20%. The other day on the news that sales in China are not going to be as good as what they had hoped. Now, the share price is now down to 47 pence a share, where it was a high earlier on in the year of 102 pence a share. So they've halved in value, really, from their peak. Now, I was sitting thinking about this. Let's get this. Let's put this into perspective. The SMWS have 40,000 paying members that pay £85 a year in the UK. I'm not sure what it is the rest of the world, but £85 a year,
and it's a good deal.
And it's a good deal. The people who are in it are fairly loyal to the whole thing. They have 115 employees. They have amazing whiskey stocks. I mean, millions of pounds worth of stock, have a global presence all over the world. They do tie-ins with bars all across the world. I think you've got a map there that shows where they have them.
Yeah.
So that's where they have reciprocal bars, bars that stock their stuff. They have bars of their own, which they're only sort of getting around to putting in. So that, for example, the Kaleidoscope bar over in Edinburgh, which is their own. And they've got 40 years of knowledge about what they're doing. Now, here's the thing, because this sort of struck me as a bit weird. They have stock that they say that's not going to sell this quarter or the tail end of this year. But Justin, even you understand this concept. If you don't sell your whiskey this year and you keep it for another year or even a couple of years, what happens to the value of that whiskey? What happens, Justin? Tell me, fill me in.
I think it gets older and it gets rarer and it gets more expensive and the value goes up, unless I go to sell it, of course.
Oh, well, if you go to sell it, then that's screwed. But here's the thing. If they're not selling it today and they keep it in casks, it actually goes up in value. That's kind of how a lot of this stuff works. Now, the stuff that they are putting out is so the stuff that they've bought in that they have reckoned is of decent enough quality for them. So I think when people talk about investment bottles and cask investments and so on and so forth, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you bought, I would pretty much guarantee that in a couple of years' time, if you bought stock in that today, that it would nearly double in value in a couple of years. I don't see what they're doing wrong. other than China's economy's a wee bit at the minute. But that'll not stay like that for terribly long, I don't think. It's just that it's slowed down a little bit rather than it's not gone into recession or whatever. So I just thought to myself that if you're like you, Justin, and have absolute unlimited wealth the way you have, then possibly you want to put a bit of money into the SMWS artisanal. They trade under artisanal spirits on the London Stock Exchange, but I mean 43 pence. I think it's a fairly easy punt for some people, you know.
I just do Hargreaves, Lansdowne, buy.
Just buy.
There you go.
You tell the stockbroker you want to buy.
Yeah.
And it's normally if it was you, Justin, your stockbroker would be saying buy, Justin. That's what they'd be saying. The kiss of death appears.
True.
But that is this week in whiskey related news that Marty decided was of interest. So hopefully you enjoyed that. But you definitely enjoy the next thing that's coming up, because the man, the myth, the legend, the creator that he is, heading around the whole place, our Fionnán's coming on. There he is. Well, have you some spare cash that you would put into buying up shares of the SMWS?
Oh yeah, I mean this book fundraiser stuff is, ring fenced for personal investment. I'll be in chains next year.
But to be honest, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, all that seems to have happened is that the sales in China are down a bit. If you don't sell it today, whiskey, the quality of stuff they're not buying out shitty grain whiskey, So I think it's a no-brainer. Anyway. Now
I was quoting you to the judge. So
yes, all you have to do is just say, Justin, go and speak to Justin McCartney, because he told me that was a no-brainer. As you get led away,
Your Honor, I refer you to this YouTube video
as a piece of evidence. Citation one. Yeah. Anyway, you've been away off in your gallivanting travels, because you've got a whole new project up and running.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us about it.
Up and on the run. But I've been away for about 3 weeks. I was in Italy, and then up. We basically drove from just south of Naples up through France. We got home a couple of days ago, really.
Hardship.
I know. Yeah. Well, you say that jokingly until you've been in the car for 5 hours with 5 other lads, on the road for 2 weeks. France starts to lose its luster.
Hey, tell us about the new project. Tell us about the new book. Tell us about the fundraising, what you've been doing, and why you're doing it.
Yeah, so all of this has been about a book that I'm currently writing, and by currently I mean like I started the first actual good bit of writing when I got back from Europe. So it's very, very early days.
Yeah,
it's in the planning it's been in the planning for years. I have a 20,000 word document on my laptop that's just been kind of spitballing this stuff. And when I was writing the thesis, I eventually had to kind of stop opening it, because I knew if I opened it, I would do no thesis work for the rest of the day. So it's the book is just starting, but it's I've been quiet about it for years. I mean, virtually from the day A Glass Apart came out, people started asking, when's the next one, before they even read the first. People just, they don't know what they want, really. And it'll be the same with this one.
Are you trying to say that the great public are a bunch of bastards? But you fucking me, please.
Now, on that charismatic note,
not
opportunity of the public to fund this.
Not the people who have funded it. They're great people. But
great bunch. So this has been on the cards for a long time, and it kind of changed. It was a real kind of COVID project, to be honest. Like everyone took up something in COVID. I took up drafting this bloody thing, and originally it looked a lot more like a kind of a traditional whiskey book, and it kind of took me a while to get the kind of courage to part ways from that and write what I'm currently doing. And it was only really maybe last year when I read Dave Broom's most recent book, A Sense of Place.
Yeah.
And that now this isn't that kind of book either, but that had made such a departure from what whiskey writing looked like that, all right, there is space to do things that are not just guides to whiskey and,
Yep.
kind of reference books or history books and there'd been just a lot of stuff that had come up during the thesis research, some of which is in the thesis in a very small way and some of which isn't in it at all.
Yeah.
And all these kind of loose bits of string had kind of piled up over the years. And even outside the thesis, loose bits of strings with like conversations with people. And so, for instance, I had been having a conversation with Eric for a good while, Eric Ryan down at Middleton, about lipid content and malting and basically the malting process, reducing the fatty lipid content of barley. And he was basically saying, well, this is as close as I can get as to a reason as to why pot still is oily. And these kinds of conversations that had come up that, holy shit, I would really love to pursue that further, and chase that topic down.
Yeah.
Or these kinds of things have just been piling up for years. And then I've been doing these projects anyway with distilleries, just, odd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it all kind of bubbled away until it hit kettle point, and now here we are. I had sat down with a few publishers, including the previous publisher of A Glass Apart, and unfortunately, a lot of what was there was an appetite for the general guide to Irish whiskey. That was the usual answer I got was, we like the idea, but we don't like the idea. How about you write, beginner's guide to Irish whiskey in, under 10 seconds.
As they used to say, it's good, but it's not right.
Yeah. And anyway, the fundraising project was kind of half that and half pre-sales of the book, kind of put together as a bundle, so that we could go to publishers and kind of make the point that there is, in fact, an appetite for something like this. So it itself materialized out of nowhere. Well, out of pure fate and accident. So when I was doing the thesis stuff with Boan, I had a kind of personal principle. I didn't take money off them, but at the end they kind of came up to me and said, "Well, pick a cask. Which one do you want?" And I wasn't going to turn down a cask of my own thesis, so I kind of pointed, "All right, I want that one." And it was
just on that point, I've bought another 2 boxes that have appeared at auction and stuff because I genuinely can't wait for the end product. So I think I have about 6 of the boxes. Because I know going forward that these are going to be a special thing going forward whenever those casks actually come to fruition. The book, you've sort of touched on what the book isn't more than what the book's going to be. So what exactly is the book going to be for people that don't know?
Book is, so it's called Créatúr, which everybody in Ireland would know is a slang word for whiskey, but might be a bit more peculiar for people outside. Although I used to think this was a totally uniquely Irish word, and Charlie McLean told me no. Few people up in the Highlands used to say Créatúr, but they'd be of a very older generation. So again, but certainly still a very, very common word in Ireland for whiskey.
No, we also use it as a term up here, certainly up here, where you turn out a poor wee creator.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's part of it too, is this strange, sense of like something a bit wretched, kind of under the elements, and it had all this. I mean, for me, when I heard people say, "Oh, I mean, even I knew people who were talking kind of hushed tones about people who were overly fond of whiskey, and they would say he's fond of the Créatúr, and there was always this kind of eerie kind of slight social guilt about it, and all of that for me is really interesting. That side of it, there is a kind of almost mystique, a kind of a spirit. And then similarly, like on the flip side, it kind of, obviously it's from creature. And I wanted to write a book that would kind of discuss whiskey less as a kind of a sum of all its brands and bottles on shelves and reviews thereof, and back to a created thing, to a thing made out of raw materials, out of agriculture, out of history, by real people, and that idea of creation, of a created thing.
And
that's why the name stuck.
And another thing about whiskey is that although the methods have changed, the actual what you do can't really change that much. It's not really. It's a fairly simple process, really, when you think about it. You make basic beer and you boil it, and
Yeah.
there's very elaborate ways of different things of doing it. Add this and add that. But at its core, it's a fairly simple thing that hasn't changed in any great way since it was invented.
Well, it's also, I think we've lost, because we've had it so long, we've kind of lost the innocence of seeing how strange the process is in the first place.
Yeah.
We forget it is literally beer that has been evaporated and recondensed, and there is something kind of elemental about doing this.
Yeah.
And when you only feel that when you explain it to someone for the first time of what distillation is.
Alchemy. It's basically alchemy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I wanted to bring it back to first principles and really talk about, I think Irish whiskey, it's a book that kind of pretends to be about the past and is really about the present. It's talking about these historical processes, but with a kind of a current generation. I think we're certainly living in what seems to be a kind of a golden generation of producers. It's just, we are at such a crossroads of what Irish distilling could be.
Yeah.
I felt there was time for a kind of a long look back, but a way that kind of pulled from the past to look at the present and across historical topics, across productional topics. And it kind of took shape over time that there would be, so that the book is divided into 24 chapters. Each one is a creature, and it's they're all named after throwaway lines from historical sources, whether they be from excise reports or newspaper clippings or stuff that I found that I thought was a bit cute. So for instance, there's one on what happened to Irish whiskey in Prohibition and how it was consumed in America beforehand and how it has been consumed since, and its life abroad. And the title of that chapter is, I must admit some bias, for it was I who first brought the highball to America. Bartender in New York, a guy named Patrick Gavin Duffy, who's again originally from Roscommon, but he wrote a book called The Mixer's Manual, which was the first kind of big cocktail book after Prohibition was repealed. And he had been a mixologist before Prohibition kicked in, and he was kind of setting the record straight, saying, well, this is how we made drinks back when people knew how to make drinks, and none of this bathtub stuff. But what's interesting, he makes this probably bullshit claim of like, it was me personally who first brought the highball to America.
Are you trying to say an Irishman might claim something that doesn't actually do himself?
So they're all kind of lines like this that are kind of diving off points into topics,
Yeah. As soon as I seen it, the first day you sent me an email. I think it was you sent me an email. Asked me. I signed up that day because I think the whole program just. But I mean, you know that you're one of the. I'm not 100% sure Scotland has a version of you. I know Charlie McLean probably would be something very similar, but I'm not 100% sure that Charlie McLean would replicate you. We're so lucky to have you. But is the membership, is the membership still open? Can people still sign up?
Yeah. So again, this cask of whiskey, I didn't know what to do with it. I had no real plans for it. I thought I'll just sit on it and bathe in it someday and try to wash away my warts. But anyway, this opportunity came up to, again, fund the book. Now it's a terrible way to raise money because the revenue obviously takes a big chunk of it. And it was eased off because obviously it's complicated enough to sell alcohol. So I literally just gave the cask to Two Stacks, and Two Stacks are now selling it and sponsoring the book on behalf. So it was a great little bit of again, not fancy footwork, but a mechanism for funding everything that was clean and above board and would allow me not to have to think too much about it. So it's currently sitting up at Two Stacks. But the idea is that the cask will fund the book. And again, there's an awful, really what it's doing, honestly, like, when you take kind of the big, I say 40% goes straight to revenue, out, and then a big chunk goes to the publisher as a pre-sale for the book. And then what's left, a lot of it goes to Marcus to pay for
you buy super noodles with
travel. Yeah. And then, a lot of it's, again, just staying over at places while we're traveling.
Mhm.
Anyway, it allowed us to kind of write the kind of book we wanted to write. You know, I was determined. I've never made a big secret about being disappointed with the way the design was handled with the glass apart. The reprint really kind of broke my heart, and I wanted to make sure that that did not happen a second time.
Yeah.
So I was, you know, Marcus is amazing, fantastic, and again, it was important for me to kind of get reassurances from the things that aren't just text, you know, and this has allowed a lot of that to happen, whether it's, again, court a publisher on our own terms or have that kind of caliber of photography and imagery. And obviously, like, for those who don't know Marcus is a photographer and designer who works in the drinks industry. So again, very much a whiskey person as well as a photography person.
Yeah.
So it's early days. The first big, and by far the biggest expense, was the first 2 chapters, which are about the early history of spirits, and that's why I was over in France and Italy. So we're still selling off we've only sold about 40%. You know, it's a big ask because, first of all, there's almost no potential for immediate flipping, so that deteriorates the interest, if we're being honest. And then, of course, you know, you have to sit on it, even if you do intend to drink it or you intend to invest in it or whatever. You're still waiting 4 years. So the idea is that we'll bottle it when it becomes a 7-year-old. And the 7-year-old thing was a kind of a nod back to, like, well, not a drop sold till it's 7 years old. You know, Bow Street was a 7-year-old, Cumber was a 7-year-old, Powers was a 7-year-old. So for an old pot still mash, it kind of romantically made sense. And I also just wanted technically to keep it young enough that it's still distillate driven. You know?
Yeah. Now, speaking of distillate driven, you were up at Hinch. You were up at Hinch and done. I had a look around and tasted their Newmake. I mean, that's another whiskey in Ireland. You know, now they've actually got a whiskey. It's a remarkable place in many ways. There's lots of.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of my time now is spent drinking Newmake. You know, it's and that visit was part of that. Is, you know, I'm convinced that, you know, certainly coming from a kind of a commentary perspective, you know, a lot of what's out there right now is kind of difficult to get your hands on because there's a lot of white noise. You know, when you're talking about what is actually going on in Irish whiskey, and I'm sure you guys feel that yourselves with the program, is that you're super saturated with news, but there's so much news that it's so ephemeral and fleeting, and it's just brand releases or this or that, and trying to get at the spine of what is going on. And for me, Newmake is a very kind of tectonic way of looking at what is going on, you know, and that's a long-term kind of idea. And again, the book, you know, what I wanted to do with the book, there's you know, kind of drams that I'm personally fond of that will feature in the book, inevitably, but a lot of it is talking to distillers in warehouses with just pulls from casks or conversations what they're doing on the whole, rather than just.
Fionnán, do you actually think it's as rosy in the Irish whiskey industry as you think it is? No. Okay, good answer. Yeah.
I think, again, it'll be a very sober day, and it is coming. It's just inevitable when the first new distilleries closes. You know.
Well, I think with the best will in the world, there's a lot of the smaller guys. Their business plans, to be honest, could be written on the back of an envelope. I think a lot of them just thought, "Oh, you make it and build it, and they will come." And I know for a fact that there's a couple that are struggling badly, for various reasons. And one of them, I know for particular, I have some of their own spirit, and it's young, but it's delicious. It's really, really good. But they thought, "Oh, we just build it, and then sure people just turn up and thing." But yeah. So
I mean, it's also, I mean, not to sound callous, but it's certainly coming from an historical perspective. It's just a fact of the industry. It has always been, you know. So, like, for instance, a question I've stopped answering that I used to get all the time from producers was, when was the last distillery in X county? And they all put on their advertising. First distillery in X number of years. And it's fairly easy to look up. So I used to just send them out. It was this and that. And then I would start seeing these eerie kind of messages like, you know, we take great pride from the Macaulay and McCartney distillery, such and such. And then you look at these distilleries, and it's like some place that lasted for 4 years. And, you know, great spirit and blah blah blah. They're so full of shit.
Well, the thing about it, people, you as you know, people think about this great renaissance in Irish whiskey now. The big renaissance was at the sort of tail end of the 18th century, where there was thousands of them appeared out of nowhere.
It's also, you know, again, not everybody lasted, possibly for good reason. Some of the time, you know, like. What's a lesser known kind of historical fact is that the biggest bump by far in Irish distilling happened just after the 1823 reforms.
Yeah.
Similar thing happened in Scotland. You know, the licensing system was reformed, and it was just massive, like, you know, huge leap up to, and then that within 10 years fell to half of itself, and then it grew up kind of slowly, you know, and and those kinds of bumps occur in any business, you know. So it gives you a kind of a perspective of like, well, there's a certain kind of, you know, David Attenborough type feeling you get watching the lion chase the gazelle, and you think like, I can't really intervene, you know. It's not that I have any capacity to, even if I wanted to, but you know, it is coming, that kind of giddy, you know, marketing statistic kind of quoting will fade away.
Well, you know, I mean, you know that there's the pricing of Irish whiskey in comparison to Scotch is just. Hang on, you know, you've got people turning around saying bottles of, you know, 5-10-year-old whiskey is selling them for like £100 a bottle and stuff, and then 16-year-old whiskey going for like £800. I mean, it's just, come on, guys, it's nuts, you know.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, Europe, I've always found, gives you a kind of or any other spirits category, drifting outside of whiskey gives you a certain appreciation of how arbitrary some of it is. So like I bought a bottle of 35-year-old Armagnac for less than 60 quid, you know.
I've been playing up.
That wasn't unique, you know, and it's only because Armagnac should be charging more than it does for itself, but because it's financially the poor cousin to cognac, you know, it doesn't get away with the same pricing strategy. And similarly, like, you know, when you look at Irish whiskey now, strange thing there is that Irish whiskey is very much the Armagnac to the cognac of Scotch, and yet, you know,
it's that sort of inverse. I've been buying up bottles of cognac and Armagnac at auction, and you're picking up, you know, 20-year-old Armagnacs from the 1950s for like 35 quid.
I know, it's embarrassing.
I mean, it's nuts. Of a bottle of Grappa from the 1940s sitting over there that I paid something like £40 for. I mean, all of that kind of stuff is to me, they're just low hanging fruit. You just pick them off now. But in terms of pricing for Irish whiskey, it is that sort of supply and demand. There's a demand, and there's a very limited supply of aged stock, so the price went through the roof. But we know that the guys who are buying the casks or buying aged stock now and trying to charge a fortune for it, at some point they're all going to get caught out.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's just going to go out from in below their feet.
I mean,
you know?
The City of London Police, I don't know if you saw the statement the other day, issued a formal warning against cask investment fraud.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
yeah. But I mean, don't get me wrong, there is cask investment if you're doing it right. You know,
but there's also fraud, and there will be, you know,
more.
And it's you know, I think, and that's not historically new either. You know, again, all this crack has been going on. You know, I mean, you look in the history of Scotch whiskey, there's all this fuss made about the Patterson fraud, where there was two brothers that lived large, basically on a pyramid scheme. They're you can do a walking tour of Edinburgh of these kind of larger than life kind of, you know, Corinthian looking columns and buildings that they built for themselves, and then the whole thing collapsed, and suddenly no bank would touch Scotch whiskey, you know. And Ireland never had a Patterson fraud, really, nothing of that scale.
Well, nothing of that scale. Well, the whiskey rang down in Copenhagen.
I mean, to give you an idea of the the consequences of the Patterson fraud really was because of that. DCL, for those who aren't familiar with Distillers Company Limited, the answer to Diageo, the reason they were allowed to get away with buying and closing so many distilleries, both in Scotland and in Northern Ireland, was the way they legally defended themselves was on the back of the Patterson fraud. And they said, well, we're trying to control the stock. Basically, the Patterson fraud was made possible because there was so much, after the column still came on top, there was so much actual product out there that no one could keep tabs on it. And William Ross, head of DCL, said, we're stopping this from happening a second time. And they were legally allowed to get away with it.
Yeah.
It is not a very selfish way of, we're stopping this because we're going to own everything outright.
We'll buy everything.
Shut down. But that kind of crack was facilitated on the back of this. And then DCL became the monolith of the 20th century Scotch whiskey industry.
Yeah.
And
and in many ways still continues to be.
Absolutely. So again, it's there's a huge, when you look at the domino effect of that particular fraud, I don't think Irish distilling has ever had unless you count the fact that like the Patterson fraud did affect Ulster, But again,
it's the same as everyone else. Do your homework, have a check, do your due diligence. If someone's coming in and telling you you're going to make 1,200% profit in 15 months, you're not. Okay, you're not. You may make some money if you do it right. And I mean, the likes of the Hinch things there, you're buying casks, they're going to look after them for you. Normally, if you really want to take the romance out of it, it gives them a bit of cash. And going forward, if you want to make some money, sell it back to the distillery. You can do this. This is well known, but don't fall for the.
Oh, I mean, it's not like we don't have plenty of Irish Pattersons going around now,
I wonder who you could mean. I was in Texas last year when there was a cease and desist sort of order. I think that's what it was. I sent out to a company who were telling people they could make vast profits on fast investments. But yeah, I won't divulge or say anything in case. Well,
our this fundraiser was the Whiskey and Poverty Club, but back down. Anyway,
but yeah. Now, in terms of your, in terms of the creator, the people who want to join, how much is it, and how do they do it?
So. Again, there's a website, creator.ie or creature.ie, or any variation. It was amazing. Creature.com was £1 million to register, whereas creature.ie was like £2. So we've got Creator and Creature, and every version of it probably goes back to the same thing.
There's always workarounds, isn't there? There's always workarounds,
Yeah. And anyway, on the website, there's a kind of a spiel about the book and a kind of a video of me with some soft music, kind of softening up the face. And there wasn't, again, the old great face for radio. Justin
does radio. Justin does radio. Not surprisingly.
You bastards. You bastards. You bastards, yes.
And it's $250 to join. And we try and be quite clear about it. So out of that 250, 40 is a pre-sale of the book, and that goes straight to the publisher. And that's actually as much of it as the actual fundraising, to have those pre-sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest obviously goes to revenue, and they cut their share, and then we get what remains. And the rest is just expenses for travel, accommodation, not just ourselves, but in quite a few of these chapters we're we've brought a few Irish whiskey producers with us to Europe, and a big part of that is that kind of educational side of it that we are sharing in this. And in return, obviously people get a book when the book comes out. Their name will be included at the back as a patron, unless they don't want it, in which case, you'll let them have their anonymity.
You're wanted by the FBI or something, don't.
And then when the bottle comes out, so the book will come out 2026, and then the bottle will be 7 years old in 2028. So when it comes out, there'll be a bottle sent to them. Those are the only bottles that there will be, full stop.
You just keep the rest of the cask for yourself. Just have a very old time for the rest of the year.
Well, we'll pull from the cask as so we've undersold the contents by a little bit just to make sure we can pull from it and not and that we're not selling bottles that aren't there. But for the most part, the bottles that we're selling are the cask. While we're writing the book, there's kind of a series of events and online kind of talks that will be just for members. And that's again another way of A, kind of adding value to the whole thing, and B, kind of saying thank you to people who have supported us and bringing them along. So like, for instance, 2 nights ago, we had the first kind of informal one, which was over at Pierce Lyons Distillery. And it was literally just some of the crack we pulled up while we were in Europe and a talk about the early history of spirits. And there'll be a more formal version of that as well. But 2024 is when all this stuff actually starts kind of kicking off. But we wanted to do something while we're still kind of wet off the boat.
No, I saw that. I couldn't get down, which I wish I could have done. But anyway, I was normally speaking working. But yeah. So what other things are exciting you in the whiskey world at the minute? Especially Irish whiskey, but maybe further afield. What are you drinking this evening? What are you on this evening?
What am I drinking? I'm actually drinking something from the book. Yeah.
Hold it up so we can get a good look. Breaking
news, I know. And there's a lot of crack like that a lot of it is built around projects. So that's from a project Fionnán are doing with the book. And so all the chapters are based around, again, kind of production topics or cultural products or and I wanted to, branch away from just kind of pure kind of the history of the industry to kind of ancillary bits of history. So, for instance, we're teaming up with the National Gallery or National Museum rather about the Harry Clark pamphlets that were done for Jameson.
Yeah.
Artists. So stuff that would have touched the industry that, is part of kind of cultural history. Or talking to farmers about kind of growing grains or agricultural research and talk about agricultural kind of shades of what it is. So they're all kind of side things, but one of the cultural ones is a chapter called which is actually a Scottish Gaelic folk song about rowing illicit whiskey from the north coast out to the Inner Hebrides. And we are sailing a cask of Fionnán out to Islay. and we are partnering with a distillery out there who confirmed a week ago.
Excellent.
The idea is to bring the cask out there and swap it. So we've got it in an Irish oak cask. We actually laid it down a little while ago. So it's Irish oak. It's sustainably felled over in the grounds of Shane's Castle. And they had dry aged oak and we sent it over to Speyside Cooperage. They did it up into, actually we got 4 quarter casks out of it, but there's one that's being used for the project. And it's been sitting there a little while. My original plan was that we would take it out there on like a ferry boat, but Stuart Drennan now wants to get the Currachs Association involved. How are either of you at rowing?
Just as a canoe.
I'm actually not too bad. I've canoed the Barrow, the Shannon, and the Van.
Like you see, doing the North Sea Channel might be a slight different thing.
Too rough.
So again, we've got a few people on board, but Mick Walsh is a rower himself. I enlisted him last week. I'm getting them one by one, and there has to be. Stuart was saying there has to be a safety boat as well. So needless to say, I'll be on that. No, I'll lend my hand as best I can, but
let me hand as the cocks. Row, you bastard, row. I can see you standing there whipping them, like Ben-Hur.
And the idea is that we would sing the song along the way, and Michael was saying to be like, do you know how if someone's having a bad time, it could make it worse? You standing over and singing at them along the way.
I could just picture this. 6 o'clock news tonight. There's been a reported exodus of people trying to escape from Larne Harbour.
Man overboard.
Man,
There-
man
there
found
you-
clinging to whiskey barrel, I guess, trying to get out of Brendan's hands. Get the fuck. I'd rather drown you, but
There's a couple of
what?
questions come in. Connor said Ronan Russell from Blacks and Kinsale is a Curra rower. And
There we
David
go.
O'Toole wants to know when's the documentary coming out?
The documentary, the BBC documentary, came out a few years ago.
No, I think he thinks that the same as I'm
Oh.
thinking. Are you making a documentary
The
about
documentary
this?
of the murder that will happen when they throw me over.
No,
the
no.
that's still in planning. But I think Netflix have bought the rights already, just preemptively.
Yeah.
so just after the David Beckham documentary, it's Fionnán's life in colour.
Great sea of moil murder, you know.
Christ. No, so in the new year you'll be announcing maybe some get-togethers down in Dublin, or are you going to head up?
We'll go out, yeah. Probably heavy on, you know, Cork, Dublin, Belfast as kind of centres. But we'll get around, you know.
Honestly, I mean, I signed up for it as soon as you sent the email, because I wouldn't want to miss. If you're a fan of Irish whiskey, you'd be a fool not to get involved with this, because I've been out on the piss with Fionnán a couple of times. The amount of knowledge you have about stuff is just incredible. But it's fun. The book will be amazing. I just know it's amazing. And the whole project, that you'll get a bottle of whiskey that, well, it's a single cask one that is all part of a project that is another string to your bow. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend everybody sign up for that.
Well, thank you again. That's what keeps we burned through the money we had in France.
All those crêpes Suzettes and whatnot. Croissants are expensive these days, you know.
Yeah, well, thankfully, again, you know, most of the gargle was free, which is usually the big expense. But again, that was part of, you know, the kind of early history. So a mix of kind of going back to the roots of distillation in the West, and that's something that used to kind of sit with me for a long time, because I think, as both you know, I originally intended to be a medievalist, and I didn't. I actually used to live in Italy when I was still writing about hell, and anyway, I was living in Florence, and I never for once expected to go back in a whiskey capacity. It was a strange kind of feeling of going back, but no, I think we got a lot from it. You know.
Yeah, I know. I always tell people that came back to Ireland via the monks, and I give some credit to St. Columbanus, who sort of established that, if you like, established that route. Now, am I correct?
There's no easy way to put this, Marty. No.
So it's just a medical route, is it?
And this used to, like, you know, I've done, you know, in undergrad I did like Irish monastic literature, that whole sort of acrostic poetry they wrote and this kind of stuff, and you know, and look, it'd be great crack if it was, but it's just not true. There's first of all, there's not a single piece of evidence, nothing, not one. But on top of that, it's just the wrong point of history. You know, it's like when you're talking about kind of the you know, Columban mission and all this crack, hundreds of years before, say you take the Red Book of Ossory, right? Early 1300s, the Columban mission is as far removed from that as that is from now.
Right.
And I think historical context is just what the industry is missing. It's that world was already long in the past. Yeah. And on top of that, the real spoil sport is that the Red Book of Ossory isn't even about whiskey. But that's another. Anyway. But there's also, you know, again, there is this more, and I've never liked kind of throwing stones. You know, it's easy to kind of sit on the sides and kind of sneer. And what I wanted to do with this is really, okay, go back to first principles And it's funny, like when you look at the history of science, that's where you find the real information, because a lot of the drinks books, including A Glass Apart, are quoting other drinks books, and they're kind of in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
Whereas if you know, the history of distillation is the history of chemistry.
Yeah.
And when you look at that history, suddenly like, oh right, first reference to ethanol, blah blah blah, first this, first that, and it becomes a little clearer. And I spent a good bit of time. For how little of the thesis it represents, I spent an enormous amount of time on the like first 10 pages because I was so determined not to fuck up. And you know, there's stuff out there. I think there's a lot of do I have it with me? You know, there's core books on the history of ethanol. There's one I always recommend to people is by a guy named R.J. Forbes, called A Brief History of the Art and Science of Distillation. And just like eating sand, it's so bloody dry. But it's you know, there's no crack in it, but it's honest. And when you fall down that rabbit hole, so for instance, this is what we went to go see, the Consilia Medicinalia by Taddeo Alderotti. And when you look enough at the Red Book of Ossory, and even the stuff around it, just the drinks industry doesn't know. But if you look at like the academic, I mean, the Red Book of Ossory is a fascinating document. I mean, it contains a bloody copy of the Magna Carta. It's important for reasons that have nothing to do with whiskey.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's a lot written about it. And when I started contacting those guys, the kind of living expert on the Red Book of Ossory is a guy named Reverend Adrian Empey, and he's a canon, kind of C of I reverend, and I met with him and talked about, you know, this kind of stuff, and the further, like, that story is for me far more fascinating than what we get told. And anyway, the Consilia was written in 1280. It's the first use of the phrase aqua vita. Okay. Now there's aqua ardens, which is an older phrase, and that's from about 100 years before. The first references to that are in the 1100s, but nothing close to the kind of, you know, monastic gargle we get told. Well, and then it's about piecing all that kind of crack together, whether it be kind of Greco-Arabic distilling history or European, and whiskey exists in context, you know.
Fionnán, is that book available online in Google? Can you get that for free online in Google, that one?
I had to get, this is an edition from I got it online in the sense that I had to go find it. It wasn't expensive, but it was kind of hard to come by.
Right.
So this was from the 1930s, this edition. I had to cut it with a razor, you know. It still had like pages that were bound together. But again, it's all out there, you know, like the X-Files. The truth is out there, you know.
Well, the thing about science is they have to document it accurately so it's repeatable, you know. Whereas, I mean, history or sort of, well, let's be honest, religion and so on and so forth, it's open to interpretation, shall we say? So, I mean, with science, I heard a philosopher once saying about the difference between theology and science was that if you wiped out humanity, barring 2 people or whatever, and they started a population, religion would come into it, but it would look nothing like what it is today. Science would have to be exactly the same, because that's the point. So I suppose when you put it like that, science has to. But I am probably going to continue for a while until I read your book. I'm going to just bullshit and say it was the monks.
But it's funny, a lot of it comes, you know, I mean, nobody enjoys being wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times in my life, you know, and I don't.
Justin was right once.
What I've always said is, I'm not out to say everybody's wrong or this or that. I just want to kind of present the research as, and a lot of it is. So, for instance, one that comes up an awful lot is this crack, the Annals of Clon MacNoise. So I went out and bought the Annals of Clon MacNoise, and page 2, you find out, you know, and this is the kind of leading scholarly introduction. They say, oh yes, as everybody knows, the Annals of Clon MacNoise was misnamed in the 1660s by a guy named James Ware, who saw the word Clon MacNoise on one page and said, must have been written here. It's nothing to do with Clon MacNoise. and the whiskey industry has been repeating this for God knows how long. So that's a very startling example where I thought, oh, right, did nobody ever perk up and go like, oh, well, I'll go find that myself and I'll take a gander.
Yeah.
And then you see, you know, and then again, it's a strange, you know, and then you find out like the line in the Annals of Clonmacnoise Noise is in like a handful of other Irish annals as well. It's in the Annals of Loch Kay, it's in the Annals of Connacht. It's just a repeated line. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with the monastery or this and that, and you know, it's again.
Are you suggesting the church took credit for stuff that may not have been factually accurate as well? You've dispelled the Irish myth that we've invented and done everything all around the world, and that the various churches.
Fionnán, you'll be saying that the fairy tale in New York. You'll be saying he's an English public school boy next. You will. You'll be saying that next.
And that the NYPD choir don't actually sing anything. We'll get struck down here.
I know it's a precarious position to be in. But again, there is, you know, so like when you look at what is there, okay, so and it's funny, there's some good sources out there. If anyone hasn't read Dave Wondridge's recent Oxford Companion to Spirits and Cocktails, that for me is in terms of like easy access consultation, a great source for you know how quick you can get to some of these stuff, because it's written like an academic publication, but it's quite short and it's quite succinct. Now the Irish bit on is a kind of a sore thumb, and I say on record I think that should do with a bit of correcting, but the rest is great. But that's just it. There is stuff out there when you look at the history of spirits, and so okay, when we take away the kind of easy to tell stories, you're talking about the what sometimes and this is where the kind of medievalist background for me used to come, was like I knew enough about this kind of part of history in general that a lot of this stuff didn't add up, and that's not right, and this is, you know, this is this. And anyway, there's a weird period in the 1100s. It's called the Little Renaissance. Almost like the Little Ice Age, and there was the reintroduction into Europe of Greek medicine via the Arabic world. So funnily enough, a lot of Greek learning survived in the Middle East rather than in Europe. And you get a lot of, so like Galen and Hippocrates and all these kind of sources come back into Europe, and they come with Arabic kind of additions to them, Avicenna and these lads. And a lot of that clusters around the Mediterranean, and it's no, and distilling comes with it. And it's no surprise that the first kind of European references, so the very first reference in Europe, there's two of them, to clear, explicit references to distilled ethanol, beverage alcohol. One is this thing called a Mappa Clavicula, which is this bizarre text written in code about specialized trades, you know, how to make glass, how to do this, how to do that. And the Mappa Clavicula actually goes on for, there's a lot of versions of it, but it's only in the 12th century that the Mappa Clavicula starts including how to distill wine. And it says wine and salt distilled in the vessel used for this business. It's all very kind of secretive. Will produce a water that burns, you know, and again, you know that it's new because they don't want people to know. And then the other one that is the Compendium Salernitanum, and that's a fascinating document. And it was published by a guy named Enrico de Renzi in the late 19th century, and it was actually lost during World War II. During the Blitz. It used to be called the Breslau Codex, because it was, despite the fact that it's from Salerno in south of Italy, again towering, really where a lot of the Arabic medical tradition came into Europe was through Salerno, for a number of reasons. But one of the biggies is that they allowed non-Christian teachers. So you had Jewish medicine, you had Arabic medicine, you had a lot of stuff kicking around.
That would have been a very strange thing. That must have been very progressive for that time, surely, God.
Enormously. So like the myth, you know, one of the things we stuck up for the fundraisers was Eric and Michael and myself under an aqueduct, and that'll be in the book.
Seen your picture, but that's because the mafia controlled everything and they allowed everybody in.
Exactly. You know, there's a very, but it, you know, the myth of the founding of Salerno was that it's almost like a pub joke. 4 doctors, you know, a Jewish, an Arabic, a Roman, and a Greek doctor all met under the arch, and each had a problem, an illness that the other one knew how to fix, you know. But it's a metaphor for the kind of confluence of cultures in the Mediterranean.
I can see the three of you standing on below going, do you fancy a pint? No, I want a burger.
You
need to change your
Yeah, we tried to do it, you know, but again, none of us look sufficiently exotic. None of us look Italian or Arabic or, you know,
Right, which one of you is pretending to be the Arab? We're not allowed to do that these days.
I don't want to get cancelled before the book even starts. Some horrible garish pantomime of, you know.
I can just see the three of you all standing there like, right, we can't do any impressions. Sure, we can't. No.
Yeah, but again,
Christ.
There is this kind of line of descent that you see happen, and certainly like across Europe, you know. So originally the term is aqua ardens, burning water, and then it's this document that seems to be first for aqua vita specifically, and then quickly after this, there's, you know, the Salerno's kind of big descendant institutions were Bologna and Montpellier, these two big medical schools, and you see a lot of stuff come out of them. And you get these people like Arnaldus de Villanova and these various kind of luminaries, all late 1200s, all late 13th century, and then early 1300s. So like, to give you an idea of that kind of interlinking, when you go to Armagnac, they tell you Armagnac is the oldest spirit in Europe, blah, blah, blah. And they go on about Vital de Four. And they say, oh, the first reference to Armagnac is in 1310. And he talks about aqua vita. And that's not about Armagnac any more than the Red Book of Ossory is about whiskey. And B, they're actually copies of the same text. And what we wanted to do was kind of tell that more organic story. Well, it's the history of spirits, you know, and whiskey only later differentiates it. You're talking about process and raw materials, and raw materials comes later. And that's just about where you happen to be. If you're in Normandy and you have apples to hand, you make Calvados. Yeah. But aqua vita is distillation. And for me, it was important to begin the book there, not just because it's the beginning of the history, but to bring it in that kind of elemental sense back to first principles and say, well, what is whiskey? Whiskey history didn't happen in a vacuum, and whiskey doesn't exist in a vacuum. And go on.
Fionnán, I don't think you've got to worry about anybody but the marketing people. The marketing people are not going to like you when this comes out. They're definitely not. The PR people might be after you too as well, because you're going to evaporate all their myths.
But he's a big enough support to be all right. Don't worry.
I know,
Whiskey Mafia will come after. Whiskey Mafia is too busy selling casks for 1,500% interest, but the actual fans will always a Fionnán's back. That's always 100% sure. I could talk to you all night, I swear, but you know that. To sign up to it, Justin's going to put the link up. How many more places are available?
We've only sold 40%, so we begging, banning, bowl in hand.
Guys, not too bad. It's only just out. It's only just
honestly, anyone who's an interest in Irish whiskey, anyone who's an interest in just general history, and if you want, I'll tell you this now. I know loads of people are always going about the investment thing. I was going about the SMWS earlier on, and Hinch doing the cask stuff. If you want a bottle to flip, and you want to be part of something fun before it comes out, sign up to that. I promise you now, because you'll not go wrong with it. Or it's a fantastic project. The project you've done with Bill, I honestly think in the last couple of years it was easily the best thing I've done. Just the tasting night with the Newmake. I can't wait for the stuff to come out you've done with Bill. I genuinely can't. And all the stuff that you do, I think you're absolutely amazing, and we're so lucky to have you. So lucky to have you in the Irish whiskey industry. But we're going to cut it and say good night, my friend. All right.
Good night.
And yeah, we'll catch up again very, very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
All right. There we go.
Right. See you later, guys.
Cheers.